So this is a review for Porky's Railroad, released in 1937. It's the 173rd in the series, and it's directed by Frank Tashlin. You can find this on the Looney Tunes Golden Collection Volume 4 DVD set, on the Porky Pig 101 DVD set, and there's a HD version out there, which I'm not sure where it's available, but it is definitely out there. Now, this one's actually in the public domain, so you'll get the full cartoon after this review, but just to briefly summarize it, just to be consistent with the other reviews, we just see a whole bunch of gags involving Porky having, a really old train, and eventually in the last third, we see a race between the more modern, for the time, train and Porky's old train. It's pretty interesting how the short is divided up in terms of what actually happens, and I will get through that too. So first you're going to see a re-edit of the original commentary I did. It's still available on the channel, but I just wanted to do a bit of a summary here and also add one bit of extra information that I mentioned before, thanks to the book by Keith Scott regarding voice credits. You'll then hear some further thoughts from me, and then you'll hear from my good friend Austin Kelly, a self-professed Tashlin-holic, who will give his brief thoughts on this short too. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Carl Starling uses so many different musical cues. I thought I'd have a look at some of them. Some of them I already knew, like California Here I Come is the main theme that's used in this one, and I'll be working on the railroad, which you'll mainly hear once you see Porky trying to get this old train up the hill. Animation there, Joe Diallo.
All right, Anthony, now let's do it in rhythm. Joe De Gallo, Joe De Gallo, or on the beat, Joe De Gallo, or you could do eighth notes. Joe De Gallo, Joe De Gallo. More asbestos, more asbestos. Oh God, it's a Simpsons reference. I can't help myself.
I think that's how I pronounce that one. And Robert Bentley. I've been told by my good friend Austin Kelly that Robert Bentley animates the scene with Porky reaching out to the guy that's rowing, and I'll point that out later on. And Joe Diallo, if I can say his name right, possibly animates the scene of the bull walking on the tracks. We have an uncredited animator, Volney White. He animates the scene where Porky's hugging the train, which I'll point out later on. Now, I love this cartoon. It's one of Tashlin's best, and I remember seeing this one back when I was little on a public domain type videotape, or at least that's where I believe I saw it. I could be wrong, but I definitely saw this one quite a few times, and I believe I saw it in colour as well. I love trains. I still do. I love the different designs of trains, and so yeah, I get a kick out of this cartoon, not just for the fact it's a genuinely funny, entertaining cartoon, but it's also a feast for the eyes in terms of railway design. This is really weird. Like, I can tell you now, they wouldn't have two trains going full speed at each other near a crossing loop like that. But anyway, we'll just go with it. Got, of course, Mel Blanc as Porky. That's a no-brainer. We've also got Billy Bletcher as the Silverfish driver. I'm not sure who does the voice of the bull, because there's like one tiny little bit part where he's just mumbling, and can I just say I love the design of this cow. It's just got that one tooth sticking out from the bottom, just similar to the camel that Frank Tashlin had in some earlier cartoons of his. And that's the bull I mentioned earlier before that my good friend believes that Joe Diallo, sorry. Now, we get some Morse code here, and this is interesting because I was just, in part of my research, someone apparently translated the Morse code, and according to this person, the Morse code translates something like, Leo Schlesinger, Hollywood picture of Porky, and Hi Ham's Porky. Now, I'm not an expert on Morse code by any means, so I'm just gonna take their word for it. The Silverfish's theme is Streamlined Greta Green, which was previously a cartoon that I took a look at, another commentary, and Auld Lang Syne is when Porky says goodbye to Toots, and that's animated by Volney White. Now, the concept of this race, I mean, just like with Porky's building, I mean, if you really think about it, it makes absolutely no sense. Oh, and Frankie and Johnny plays very briefly there with a Mae West caricature right there. And we're going to see SS Leon, of course, after Leon Schlesinger, and we're going to hear the Sailor's Hornpipe, which was used as Popeye's theme. Anyway, as I was saying, the premise of the Porky's building is that they're going to give all this money for 2 buildings to be built, and the first one built is the winner, which makes absolutely no sense. Here, same thing, like, why would they do such a race? I mean, yeah, it doesn't make sense, but you know what, again, it's nothing against the cartoon. I'm not holding against the cartoon. I just find I find that it makes it even funnier when you try and get the logic to some of these ideas. But even though Porky wins the race, he's still going to do Silverfish anyway, so I don't really see the point of the race, but that's alright, we'll go with it. We'll definitely go with it.
So those are my original thoughts, but I definitely have plenty since I've had a chance to look at this one. I covered a lot in the commentary, but I just wanted to put this short into context because this is definitely something of a bygone era. So in the US at the time, rail was still king, and there was 2 reasons for that. One, cars were still too expensive for a lot of the middle class. It was certainly being made and bought, but it tended to be bought by the more well-to-do people at that time. And it was only really after World War II that things started to pick up in a sense that, yeah, car sales grew and then freeways were built and so on. But aside from that, the other reason rail was king at the time was cross-country travel. Planes were around, of course, by this point in history, but again, it was definitely a luxury. Some would argue it still is, but it's definitely these days easier to get a plane ticket to where you need to go, and in more efficient ways, but much better planes and so on than it was back then. But then, by the 1950s, cars were finally cheap enough for middle class to buy, and they were seen as more attractive than train travel, since you had the freedom to go basically wherever you want, and of course the whole car culture thing would rise in the 50s. You'd have your gas stations and motels along the way of these massive roads that were built and freeways and such. But conversely, when it came to rail travel, less investment in that. It was seen as just yesterday's news kind of thing, except for cities like New York and heavily populated areas. So train travel in the US is definitely way behind what you see in Europe and, of course, the big one, Japan. And even China is ahead, and South Korea. So, yeah, I can see, though, that a lot of cities in the US are now finally getting back into the public transport game and building trains and so on, but they definitely have a lot more longer to go. And Australia's no better either. It could be a lot better here. It's not too bad, but yeah, it was definitely a case of, well, cars provide you that extra freedom and trains did not. So, yeah. So let's take a look at some of the other things in this short that I missed last time. So you got the 30th Century Limited, so that's a parody of the train called the 20th Century Limited, and that was a train running from New York to Chicago from 1902 to 1967. And of course, yeah, then we see the added joke of Porky's 15th Century Limited. Yeah, clearly. Hey, his train is definitely on the way out. Timing-wise, I thought it was interesting that the entire first minute was pretty much just Tashlin showing off this train. There are no gags. You hear California, Here I Come, and all of that, but yeah, there's basically no gags there except for the name of the train, which I thought was interesting. And yeah, I also like how it says everything is cracked, including the engineer. I thought that was a pretty funny joke. And as the train goes up the hill, we of course see the snail is faster. Yes, we get it. The train is slow, but I thought that was pretty funny. But anyway, so to put another thing in the context, a lot of the country railroads were single track and still are, as I understand it, in the US and in a lot of places. The situation with the two trains heading towards each other, well, it wouldn't have occurred like this. And yes, I know, it's just a gag, I get it, but just to let you guys know what would really happen here is that usually there'd be a system where at a passing loop, usually at a train station, sometimes you have passing loops in the middle of the long stretches of single track, the train drivers would pass like a baton or something to say, yep, I'm clear to travel this particular section, because whoever's holding that particular, item, usually it's a baton. I know in Australia it is. I'm not too sure about the US if they adopted a similar system. And this was before modern signaling, but they would have the right of way to travel down the track. And if you did not have that baton, you could not enter the next section of track. You had to wait for the next train to come down to give you the baton so you can travel the other way. So a bit of train history there for you. And still, at nearly 3 minutes, we still have no plot. We just have another situation of Porky just dealing with this cow on the train track. And there's nothing wrong with this part. I thought it was pretty funny. I love the design of the cow and that. But, yeah, it's just, Tashlin's just more interested in just showcasing trains here and doing whatever. Now, if you've been following this channel, I love looking at letters and freeze framing on it to have a look at it. Of course, Eye Full of Cinders. Yep, beautiful. We've got to love that. And the cheapness that Porky has to return the spikes. Great, great. But just the term streamlined train, that refers to trains with a shape designed to improve on wind resistance and, of course, having much better timetables. So the older trains, it was more about the fuel and how it would actually make the train go faster. But then later on, designs were done to the point where it's, well, okay, we can do that, but also if we design a train in such a way with less wind resistance, we can improve in that way too. So that's what it's referring to. And that Silverfish is basically a parody of all those streamlined trains that are coming into service. The name could be also a reference to the saying the silver tuna, which is basically an object believed to be better than anything else in its category. Funnily enough, I learned that from Home Alone, by the way. But that's it, Marv. That's the silver tuna. We hear Porky say, "Party in such sweet sorrow," and that's a line from Shakespeare play Romeo and Juliet, and that's what Romeo says to Juliet. You didn't think I'd be mentioning Shakespeare in this review, did you? But here we are. A great angle, and what Tashlin does best is that angle where Porky is breaking the fourth wall about, oh yeah, my train can beat his, and the other driver just happens to hear the fourth wall breaking, saying, oh, let's race. And just like Porky's building, as I mentioned in the commentary, man, what a waste of time and resources this would actually be. Try and organize that in your local city and, yeah, see how far that gets you. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Now, I've got to put the handbrakes on because there was one thing I completely missed last time, and part of me is, yeah, I should have missed it. But there is an unfortunate racist gag here. And you're probably wondering, why is there this black stereotype coming out of a woodpile? Well, there is a saying called N-word in a woodpile. I'm not going to say that word. Not just because YouTube will flag me, but it's just, I just don't like saying it, alright? But that's where it comes from, and it means some fact of considerable importance that is not disclosed, something suspicious or wrong. And that's the definition I found looking it up, because I hadn't heard that term before. I thought that gag was just, oh yeah, the stereotype character was just happened to be living nearby there or something, but anyway, it turns out that it had a bigger meaning. There are a few possible origins to the phrase, which I'm not going to get really into, but a lot of them involve some sort of variant of railroad origins, like to do with the wood being transported or the Underground Railroad, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's unfortunate, but I guess at the very least I could see why it's there, but I'd rather not, of course, but anyway. And the cherry on top, you briefly hear Dixie in that part, so I'll let you draw your own conclusions. And timing-wise, the whole show is just one massive setup, and then really it's just the final 2 minutes of just gag after gag with this race, which is a great race, but it's just, I think it's more Tashlin just experimenting with storytelling, and clearly he wanted to do live action, and he eventually did, so I'm guessing this was just a way for him to actually explore different things in regards to filmmaking. And two final things I'll mention before I turn it over to my good friend Austin Kelly. I like how the sailor that just happens to get caught on from that ship is just singing the song Don't Give Up the Ship. I thought that was a nice little funny music pun. That was one of the songs I missed in the original commentary. And if you look at the colour effect of the bull running at full speed, just absolutely pissed off at Porky, but actually helping him out, of course. But that colour effect, I thought that looks really good. And yeah, I know it's black and white, but you know what I mean. I'm sure you get what I'm saying. So anyway, here's my good friend Austin Kelly to give his full thoughts on this. Take it away, Austin.
Hello, everybody. Austin Kelly again to talk about another Frank Tashlin banger, Porky's Railroad. This one gets overlooked a lot, and I'm not sure why. I think part of the reason might be that it's in the public domain. I think it's one of those cartoons you just see all the time as a kid, and you grow up, and now you're looking at cartoons through a critical lens, and you come across Porky's Railroad, and you're just like, oh yeah, I remember seeing that on the Dollar Tree discount bin compilation back in 1984, so I'm not gonna give it any attention, but it's actually a really good one. As usual, Frank Tashlin, sort of the iconoclast, the experimenter. He's not doing things like he usually would. He spends just about half of the time of the cartoon setting up the situation, or if not setting up, then just devoting way too much time to showing off Porky's train and like a modern train. And the race at the end, that sort of plot, is technically only the main plot of the cartoon, but it feels like a subplot, because that part at the beginning is so meaty, it's chunky, where Porky is going along in his slow train, and they're trying to get up the hill, and he throws the pepper in, and it shoots up, and it's going faster now. That's a significant amount of this 7-minute cartoon. So, Frank just kind of not having it as far as plot goes, just going along with it. But that's not to say that the race isn't a beautifully timed, wonderfully staged, written part of the cartoon. This is a lovely cartoon, but again, you just tend to overlook it because public domain, if I had to guess, one of the reasons. This is another one of those cartoons with the old Tashlin hates Porky thing. Porky as a character is kind of a stretch. He doesn't really have any character-specific things going on here. He doesn't really speak, so you don't really get the stutter. You get a couple good stutter gags, but you're not seeing a lot of the specific Porky Pig. This could have been Mickey Mouse. This could have been any nameless bozo in this cartoon. But of course it had to be Porky, because those were the cartoons Tashlin had to make against his own will if he didn't like the character, but they provided some good opportunities for him, so what can you do? But it's sort of the same thing again, where you see Tashlin has a lot more interest in the side characters and the side things. That fish that comes out of the river, or obviously Porky's rival in this cartoon. He gives them all the best scenes, all the funny gags, the best voice actors. Porky in this cartoon is just like means to an end to have somebody to initiate a badass train race, but even doing anything in it. He's really just there to conduct the train, and there's not a lot of Porky on or in Porky's Railroad, but that's okay because it's still a pretty cool cartoon. So I guess that's all I have to say. It's kind of a weird one because, again, there's not really a lot to say. But I think you could go really deep. Like, you could analyze these things really, really deep down. But you have to have a purpose for it. Just casually talking about the Warner Brothers cartoons is easy and fine and okay and all. But analyzing them specifically and deeply is tough to do in one couple-minute session. So it'd be interesting to see if we can do that for whenever we get to Case of the Stuttering Pig, which I think is going to be next, because that is, of course, an all-time favorite of mine, and that will deserve the utmost analysis and tearing that one apart. So that'll be fun. We'll see what we can do, but until then, keep it real and keep watching cool cartoons.
As mentioned in the commentary, I love this one. I really do. It's a childhood favourite growing up, and I don't even recall seeing that one unfortunate gag. Maybe it was fixed up in the colorization, because I think that's how I saw it. But anyway, look, that still doesn't change the fact that I enjoy this one, and I give it 8 out of 10. It's one of Tashlin's best. Maybe not his greatest. I'm looking at some of the ones in the 40s, and a few other ones like The Case of Stuttering Pig and all that as being his absolute best. But this one, great short. Just mind that one gag. And yeah, definitely look into some of the history on the trains, because it's definitely interesting from a design perspective, from a historical perspective, how the US went in one direction regarding transportation and other countries, of course, went another. So yeah, that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, and now enjoy the cartoon. So take care.
Gesundheit. Pardon me, Mrs. Cow. Will you kindly get off the track? Come on, get going. Time's a-wasting. Amscray, you mess of T-bones. It's cows like that give milk the bad name. I'll bet she can't give sweet milk with a sour puss like that. So, you won't walk, eh? I'll show you, you four-legged piece of hamburger. Goodbye, toots, old gal. Parting is such sweet sorrow. I wish you lots of luck, Mr. Silverfish.
Say, what is that? A percolator on a roller skate?
I'll bet my Tootsie can beat his old Silverfish.
Oh, yeah? It's a bet. We'll have a race and see.
What a man.
They stand together, give up the share. He can't get away with a thing like that, I'll show him.